I see them looking at me, but none of them, they don't wanna know me, just wanna show me to their homies. Hello and welcome to the Mixed Bag podcast with me, Nayo. Nice to have you. I don't know about everyone else, but it's feeling, I'm very excited about the fact the world is going to start opening again, but I am also a little, there's a little bit of anxiety. There's definitely a little bit of anxiety that's starting to come in. And that's because really we've all been left in our little bubbles for the past year, some of us completely by ourselves. And yeah, there's a little bit of anxiety about what is going to happen when the world opens, and people haven't had time and space to exercise their social skills and have also been going through this very traumatic time and triggering time for a lot of people around things like race, gender-based violence. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of conversation around that. So that's kind of what this episode is about. It's talking to Alice, who I first met when we were, she was brought up to be part of the Sisterworks, which was a independently organised summit basically to get women into the entertainment industry. Once again, something that was set up by people in the community because there was a huge sector not being supported. And it was a really brilliant event. But one that also ultimately kind of started off really well and then lost a little bit of steam because there wasn't really any support in place to keep things like this going, which can be very emotionally draining, even though they are very, very needed. And it's something that we touch on a bit on this podcast because, that's where I first met her, and she is a excellent person in her own right, which you'll hear when you listen on. But within the last couple of years, we've become a lot closer, and we have been setting up our own organisation together called Insight into Action, which is looking at training around intersectionality and the need for diversity to be taken seriously by the arts and arts organisations and everybody really. But I as part of my work as part of my inclusion and diversity work, which for people who don't know, that's also something that I do as a little another business, because why only stop at three? But yeah, basically I started working as an inclusion and diversity consultant within the arts about 3 years ago, and have been developing that with Alice and a couple of friends, and we recently set up our own organisation. And within that work, when I first started off, I was working for a arts organisation called Arts Based Life Space, which is based in the UK, based in Bristol, and their sister company, Invisible Circus. And I went to work as the inclusion officer with them. And shout outs to them because it's the funding from Arts Based Life Space, which has actually contributed to this podcast. So thank you for that. And it was to finish off some of the work that was started with them, me and a group of volunteers, which we called the Art of Inclusion team. We put together a framework called Hult Harassment. And this was off the back of something that me and Alice go into a little bit in the episode. But basically, whilst running an event as Booty Bass, which is my all-female and non-binary DJ collective, there was an assault. And it was really surprising to me because it was someone who didn't normally come to my events. It happened to someone very close to me. And afterwards, there was that real thing of, well, how do we tackle this? Because some people, a lot of the time people don't want to talk about horrible things that happen at their events because it's like, oh no, well, if it seems like something horrible that happens at an event, no one's going to come again. And I was really adamant that shouldn't be the case, that it should be talked about, that it should be taken very seriously because it affected me very seriously. And it really made me think about the power that we have as event planners, as venues, as promoters, as performers. We can all contribute to making spaces safer for our audiences if we're working together and if we're working smart. And a lot of the time when, I think everyone's got a story, every woman's got a story of having their arse grabbed or something groped and then or having to dance in a circle around your one friend who's trying to get rid of that creep. Like, we all have stories about how we've had to protect ourselves, and a lot of the time it's been just ignoring something or having to stand up for yourself and then dealing with the often violent backlash that comes back. So yeah, Halt Harassment was basically something that me and the team put together, which was trying to get venues and promoters and everyone to be working from the same framework, and assault and abuse not only being recognised or not only being decided on whether it should be taken forward by different people, depending on who is on the door, depending on who is running the bar, depending on who is running the event. Your complaint might be taken seriously or not seriously. If someone understands what, misogynoir is, if someone understands that, asking to touch someone's hair is not okay, if someone, doesn't think that a guy grabbing your ass is a problem, and if anything, it's a compliment, all of these things, which, that's not the case. It was always being dealt with by different people in different ways, and that it makes it incredibly hard to identify, but then also fight against. So this is a slightly longer episode than normal, also slightly longer because I seem to have done a very long intro. But there's a lot to talk about, and it's a big subject, and I really wanted to give it the space and the time that it needed. So basically, Hult Harassment is something that is in the works. It's now kind of, a framework has been put together with some templates and codes of conduct and staff contracts and a flow chart of how to deal with different harassments in different ways. And if that's something that you're interested in, head over to my website or just type in Hult Harassment, and you can go on the Art of Inclusion website as well. And it's all there. And really now it very much is just an initial idea looking to be developed. So if this is something that you're interested in, if it's something that you're passionate about, please do drop me an email, mixedbag@nioanya.com, and or hit me up on Instagram @nioamusic, and let's start working on it together. One thing that I really did realize throughout this process was that these huge conversations, these campaigns, they don't go far enough if it doesn't have more people on board, because so quickly it can feel like it's on one person's shoulders, and as soon as that happens it feels far too big and far too heavy and far too frightening. So yes, I think that's just about everything from me. I'll do a little outro as well, but I really hope you enjoy this episode. It was really cathartic, I think, for me and Alice to talk about this together, and I really hope you enjoy it. So thanks again to Artspace Lifespace, who put the funding together to be able to do this, and have also commissioned a few other pieces of work to go along with this campaign, which hopefully should be rolling out towards the summer. Thank you to Red Stripe as well for their contribution, and also to Coach House Studios, who puts this together. All right, then, here we go. You're listening to the Mixed Bag podcast with me, Nio. Hello, nice to have you. And today we are going to be talking about a variety of things. We're going to go on a bit of a journey, but it's mainly going to be thinking about harassment, about the nighttime industry, and how it's a lack of care towards people from the intersections and women is something to really be looked at and thought about. And my guest today is the wonderful Alice Holland, who, sorry babe, do you mind me saying your whole name? I just thought that.
That's fine.
Okay. The wonderful Alice Holland. And we have been friends for quite a while now. And when we first sort of got into contact, we used to have these very big conversations about how we wanted to have a really make a good effect on the entertainment industry as two people who've worked in it for a very long time. And in the last couple of years, I've been talking around safety and harassment, and the work that we've both done whilst working in this industry, together and separately, on different ways we can make sure that we feel safe and the people that we're around feel safe. And it feels especially relevant to do this now. Obviously, everyone's been locked up for a year. So social skills have gone down and clubs and nighttime industry is about to open, and actually are spaces ready for what that could be. So hi, Alice.
Hi, Nine.
Hi.
Love. I'm so glad we're doing this. I mean, it feels like we've been in this conversation, as you say, for quite a while now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know about you, but like, yes, I miss my industry. You know, I miss festivals, I miss clubs, I miss people, but also like the thought of that actually happening again with people whose social skills have been completely diminished and you know, everyone just dying for a bender, like the thought of it's like, I'm like, oh my god, it's going to be like carnage in the streets. Like I'm not sure actually I am ready. Like maybe I've romanticized
going out and what
that's
that's
thing.
Exactly. And I think especially as, you know, in this time we've had some pretty triggering things happen. You know, we've had a second round of Black Lives Matter, which triggered a lot of white people, no, let alone black people. I mean, we've been just dealing with this conversation for a while, but there's a lot of white people who are kind of like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? Which is frustrating in its own way. But, you know, we had that. And then we also had chewing gum, which I think made a lot of people rethink consent, rethink what, you know, just rethink everything. I think that series really turned a light bulb on in a lot of people's minds about things that they've let go because they couldn't be bothered or didn't have the words to be able to say, no, that wasn't right, and that's not something that I was comfortable with. And even when the world opened up very briefly last summer, I saw just some really worrying behavior from a lot of people, you know, not strangers, like a lot of people who had been inside with themselves and their own thoughts and their triggers and had nowhere to direct that conversation, so that when they were around people, suddenly all of this stuff was coming out. Like no one had control over what they were saying or really doing. And I was like, wow, this is going to be something that we really have to prepare ourselves for.
You know, I've actually been having the preparatory conversation with Nadine Artois from Pussy Palace, and I were talking about this exact anxiety the other day, and we were thinking, like, do we need to like start hosting some like basic social etiquette classes? Like, I think we're going to need like a little like, you know, a shallow end.
Yeah.
You know, just like not like speed dating, but almost just like the art of chit chat.
Yes, yes. Small conversation.
And, you know, my ridiculous party throwing mind going where it was. I'm like, what if this is the moment for the return of like ballroom dancing and card games and all those like really like simple set of rules that allow anyone to socialize with anyone without bringing loads of yourself there. I'm like, what if it's ballroom dancing? That would be like thing. And, you know, that also links to my theory that because of, you know, the popularity of TikTok and lip syncing on Drag Race, I also think that a second renaissance of silent movies is on the horizon. But yeah,
that would be excellent.
The anxiety is real, and almost everyone I've spoken to, you know, punters and producers of nightlife alike, like we're all a bit like, what the hell is going to happen?
Yeah.
And I think also, you know, just not the kind of the general public's, you know, social skills aside, I think it's like, I don't know about you're kind of more of an extrovert than I am, but I work in nightlife because I'm crap at going to parties, but I'm great at throwing them, because for me to feel comfortable in social spaces, I either need to be the one being like, here it is, I made something for you, enjoy it and let me watch, or, you know, from in dialogue with people at a safe distance with a microphone in my hand.
But I mean, I would say the same about me. It's funny because people say that a lot about me. They're like, you're an extrovert. I'm like, I'm a performer. They're two very different things. And actually,
like I love being at home by myself. That I really thought, like, with the when the pandemic happened, my first thought was like, oh my God, yeah, I get to be alone at home for months. And obviously, you know, that wore off very quickly. But yeah, I mean, I think we all, you know, we're all in this industry for different reasons, and I'm the same. You know, I like going out and listening to loud music, and I like talking to people that, you know, and I like talking. You know, that is absolutely cannot be denied. But I like that in small doses, and I think that's also why I've become so, like, I think when running Booty Bass, well, not even running Booty Bass actually, I think when I started DJing and I started being on the other side of the decks, and I had that extra layer of security and safety that came with being someone there with a purpose, who was automatically being catered to by the venue and by the people running it. Suddenly I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much safer than I have in a long time. And that's really why I started running my own events, because I was like, this is the only way I'm going to feel safe, because I don't feel safe on the dance floor anymore. It's not a place which is comfortable for me anymore. And I also became very conscious about the places that I was going to. Like, it didn't even really matter who was playing. It was like, what is that venue like? What is their safeguarding like? What are their security like? Who are the people that run it? If something happens, will it be taken seriously? And yeah, I think as I become more aware with that kind of the layer of safety that comes when you're when you're there with a purpose, I just thought it shouldn't be that way. We should all be able to feel safe. I should be able to go anywhere and feel safe. But I'd almost put that feeling of discomfort with just partying. You know, it's like, yeah, you go out and you expect at some point to be grabbed. You know, the hair, the arse, the something. You expect someone to say something ignorant. Like, that was almost what came with going out, which is part of the reasons why I think I used to pre-drink, to be like, okay, so let's make sure I've got a good alcohol blanket on for the first hour.
You know what? This might be diving in a little bit deep, but fuck it. That layer of psychic preparation, that layer of armor that women have to wear, that people of color have to wear, that disabled people have to wear, the inevitability that we are going to be bothered, that we are going to have our energy demanded, that we are going to have to be the ones to outsmart people who are not so smart about how they want to talk to us, or who don't care about how they want to talk to us. That is ultimately one of the great control mechanisms of society. It's like, if we're exhausted, if we're afraid, if we know it's going to be more hassle than it's worth to speak up, that we will be penalized, that's how we're kept silent, and that's how we're kept afraid. And the levels of resentment that can build around that, it's you know, that again, that takes so much, you know, psychological energy to be like, no, I will not think that all men are the same, even though, to be honest, the majority of them are not really helping me change my mind on that. Because of course, you know, it's another great, you know, failing on our part to, you know, to be an angry Black woman who has been forced to notice the fact that you know, society is somewhat skewed against her, and to be, you know, a man hater. Like, well, why would you not hate a group of people who persist in ignorantly getting in your way? Like, I'm not really here for hate. I can't be bothered. You know, the way that I get around those levels of rage is to be actually like, you know what, I'm just going to minimize my perception of you when I'm out. I'm like, I'm pretty good now. Like, if I do go out, or when we do go out again, I'm like, you know what, okay, make the bubble of light around me, be with my people, go to the spaces where I know I can potentially take that armor off a little bit. But
it never goes fully down, though. It never goes fully down, and you're always on edge. And it's funny because, yeah, it's that thought of why. That I'm just like responding to like what you were saying about the angry Black woman, and yeah, like man hater, and we get put with these labels. But it's like, I was talking to someone recently who said, yeah, well, when they start saying to you, oh, you're being a man hater, you're being an angry Black woman, instead of going, no, I'm not, just say, yeah, and why is that? Yes,
Yeah,
I am angry. And why is that? Yes, I'm not really fond of males right now. Why is that? Ask me why and listen to what I've got to say. And then we can have a conversation instead of just going, all right, love, grab her ass. Why are you touching me? Oh, look, it's another man hater. Oh, look, it's another lesbian. It's like, how are we still in this space where people think that they can say things like that and there will be no consequences and that the person will just shut up? And it's normally because these people who say these things are in big groups of people and they are directing it at one person. And I think also what really annoys me in those situations isn't just the fact that you might be the person on the other side of that, but there will normally be other people around who will see it, who will hear it, and who won't do anything about it. And it's like, it's that it's silence is control. And especially in Britain, there's this idea that that's polite. You know, you can't go and get involved because that would be impolite. It's like, okay, well, while everybody's being very polite about all the awful behavior they're witnessing, who loses out? Who's going home early? Who's beating themselves up about not having a witty enough response to come back to that person to be able to regain some self-respect? Like, it is such a exhausting way to have to think all the time. And that layer of thought that so many people just can't be bothered to engage with because it's too hard is the most frustrating out of all of it, because there's a lot of good people out there who will not do a thing because they don't have to. It's not bothering them. It's not, they're not going to take that home with them. Therefore, they can perceive it as sad, but conveniently take away any responsibility of having to do something.
I think that's such an important thing to really think about. You know, it's like, okay, yeah, you know, don't make a scene, don't react, you know, don't be rude. I'm like, well, to be honest, I find, you know, white supremacist patriarchy to be quite rude. Like, you know, it's like, don't make a scene, don't point out that this is fucked and this is systemic. And I think, you know, there is willful ignorance, and there are lots of people who just simply don't want to engage in that conversation because they don't feel it applies to them, they don't feel it's interesting. I think with the bystander thing and with whether you react or not, I do think it is important to recognize, like, I have frozen up, certainly, when you know, when I've been, you know, touched or spoken to, or, you know, like I've sort of seen something and that doesn't look right. And I think there is something very real to consider in that we're all traumatized by this stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and, you know, you'll like walk away like, why didn't I say something? And again, it's a fear thing. It's a survival thing. You know, that kind of like, don't speak or not knowing what to say, or should I, is that right? Am I making this up?
Oh my gosh.
She's probably fine. She's laughing with that look of a scared horse in her eyes. You know, she's all right. She knows what to do. Yeah. And I think it is, we need to find a way of recognizing and healing that trauma, getting people to understand the impact of their actions in a way that doesn't make them do that, well, I just won't ever speak to a woman again kind of thing. And actually kind of like to really like get good at being around each other. You know, I think particularly with gendered stuff, it's so combative. You know, it's so much about, I don't know, I've lost my...
That's all right. But it was funny, as you were talking, I was thinking as well, like, it is, everyone reacts differently. And that's also why it's like, in terms of the bystandery, like, I've also seen something and frozen, been like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure how to handle this. But then my first reaction has been like, well, let me go and at least stand by the person who this is happening. And then I can gauge if they want me to get involved. And that's the thing. It's like, everyone's going to have different responses. But if, like, because everyone's responses are so different, probably if everybody responds, it would be fine. And, you know, what you're saying about the deer in the headlights, but laughing. I remember speaking to someone recently and they were like, yeah, so there's, what is it, fight, flight, flop, and the one that never gets mentioned is friend. And actually a coping mechanism and a mechanism that kicks in can be friend. And that's my mechanism. My mechanism is, let's try and get out of this as quickly as possible. How do I do that? I'll make a joke. I'll start backing away. But anyone who knows me is going to know that that laugh is not because I'm enjoying myself. That laugh is nervous. That laugh is panic. And that laugh is someone come and help me. But again, it's like we don't talk about friend because friend is easy to think, as you say, that person's got it under control. And actually, if it's someone who's being attacked by people, it doesn't matter if they're laughing or not. Like, it was really fascinating to me when I went to Nigeria, how much people will step in, you know, people, even if you see someone who's just said something a bit like off, if anyone hears it, they're coming, what are you talking about? You know, stop it. Like, everybody gets involved with each other because they're all so socially aware. Like the social awareness in Nigeria really not surprised me, but like I like to think I'm quite an empathetic person. Like, I like to think that I can connect with different people in different levels. Like, that's why I love journalism and talking to people.
Yeah.
But watching my auntie be able to like just turn on whatever was needed for whoever she was talking to, and the swiftness of like between each person, like bing, 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 bing. And I was like, this is amazing, because they are social creatures. Everybody is out on the street talking to each other all the time. So it's not like here when everyone, even, you know, pandemic aside, are in our own little boxes and we don't really engage with each other unless we're at these places and we're drinking loads of alcohol and we're partying, and there's this level of hedonism which allows for really poor decision making and behavior, and we kind of just let it go because also we're a binge drinking cultured place, which is again one of the things that people lean on when they're behaving really badly.
Oh my God, yeah, the booze thing is because I worked as a showgirl for 11 years. I was in like cabaret and circus and stuff. So basically Friday and Saturday nights, special occasions, high days and holidays, that was when I was witnessing the UK at its absolute worst. You know, we call it Black Friday before Christmas. Nobody ever wanted to work it because when you've got office parties of people who've been kept in captivity who are suddenly given a free bar and out it comes, like I'm seeing that through sober at work eyes. It's like, oh my God, like we are not an emotionally intelligent nation. No. I think it's fair to say. And, you know, the alcoholism, and that's not just, you know, that's not specific just to the UK. I think that's, you know, industrialized nations everywhere. The use of alcohol is so permitted because it allows you to just blow off enough steam from your shitty grind of a life or your lockdown of a life to act out, get it out, act on impulse, and not remember it well enough to then reflect on what actually went down and change. You don't have time. You just go back 9 to 5 to doing the thing and thinking that you're probably all right, filing away the guilt and shame at the back there so that you can't truly have, you know, a healthy sexuality or whatever. But it's so different to like, I was watching a documentary about DMT and hallucinogens yesterday, and it's just, you know, it's like it that is, you know, a holiday from your everyday as well, but it's such a different thing to alcohol because it's about, you know, going in intentionally, you know, often going into a space to learn. You know, it's not about waking up with a hangover to, you know, live another day. It's about waking up in another day. And I just, you know, having worked, and this is one of the inescapable things about the work that we do, you know, working at festivals, working in clubs, you know, like the bar is what pays for the DJs.
Yeah, exactly.
The booze, you know, the booze is what pays for the party to happen. It's not really the ticket sales. And that is going to be something that's going to be really interesting to try and navigate over the next few years. I know a few people that are sort of talking about, you know, like sober clubbing. I've been talking to some friends in Brighton about, you know, like, sober clubbing. It's like, I don't need to be drunk to dance. In fact, I need other people to be drunk so that they don't feel weird that I'm quite happy dancing
to dance.
Exactly. To get wherever they need to be comfortable, because I'm like, I'm ready. Tunes are
Yeah,
on,
exactly.
let's
Songs
get
on.
in there.
Let's go. Exactly. And the thing is as well, yeah, I really want sober raves to come because again, it's like it's just normalizing yourself. It's like do whatever you want to do and don't need to like don't have such high levels of of anxiety and like yeah and social anxiety of what is everyone going to think if I get up and do this. Like I don't need to have anything to go and dance in the middle of a dance floor if I want to. That's not to say I always want to because sometimes I don't, but like that like alcohol isn't the thing that's going to get me out there. What's going to get me out there is how happy I feel at the place that I'm in, how safe I feel in that environment. And I just want to quickly, because I've just realized we started and obviously we dove straight in because that's what we do, but we actually haven't talked about you and your and where you're from and what you do and your wonderfulness. We just kind of, that's how we do. Well, no, but that's just what we're used to doing. But yeah, so like you touched a little bit on being a showgirl.
Yeah.
So yeah, how did you get to the place you're at right now in terms of your career and your loves and your what you do?
And my opinions.
And your opinions, which I like.
Whistle Stop Tour grew up rurally on Dartmoor. Wasn't cool enough to go to raves. Was very busy writing poetry and being an overdressed loser. But then moved to London when I was 18. The first job I got was as a fetish model by accident. So through that was kind of going to like fetish clubs, burlesque shows, all that kind of thing. So it was in that kind of like entertainment kind of area. But I was also being taken under the wing of like elder goths who would take me to happy hardcore raves in Camden and stuff, and that was delightful because I was the baby and being taken care of by kind of by my elders, which was lovely. So I had a very potentially a slightly belated but very charming introduction to raving. Worked for 11 years. Based out of London, on tour quite a lot, as Ophelia Bits, cabaret gobshite for hire.
Which is where I first met you.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was only...
barged into my dressing room demanding an interview. Which of course I loved.
I remember seeing you and I was like, I'm going to go and interview her. So I was like, do you know her? I was like, not yet. And I just remember you had this you had this snake around you and I was like, that's my kind of gal. And like a rubber snake, obviously. And it was literally...
No, it was a two-headed Arctic wolf that I had made.
That was it. That was it. And it was only...
the two-headed wolf. Named after my breasts, side note. So anyway, did that for a long while. As I said, got to see, the general public, the, celebrity underworld, the backstage VIP situation, some, non-disclosure agreement type scenario for a long time, which was ideal for me because, as I said before, I love being at parties. I'm not very good at being, a party guest, and after 11 years of being in the backstage on the stage, like I do not have particularly advanced normal socializing skills. Like sitting around a table in a pub with a group of people, I'm like, oh god, should I sit here? I don't know, like I've been like earned my living here. Anyway, did that. After 11 years, decided it was very much time for a change and started working more as a producer. I do a lot of stuff in disability arts, very into kind of poking away at inclusion and diversity stuff, how we can, change the kind of, I'm more in the kind of like public funded art sector these days. But I also, I ran the Sistxerhood at Glastonbury for 3 years, which was the first... Well, it's kind of its description and guest list changed over the years. Initially, it was like, oh yeah, it's all women only, and then of course, as the team evolved and changed, and as our, you know, as vocabulary and our intention changed, you know, that became much more like femme identified people, non-binary crew, basically no boys allowed, but without putting boys at the center of what we're about. And you know, I describe that as kind of just like clubbing but without the harassment. And it's a really magical space, and I feel so privileged to have been invited to do that, because seeing what a nightclub is like, where no one is afraid and everyone is free. And, you know, I just think Girls and Co are the best anyway. So I just think it's to be able to be offering that space for people to get so jacked up on each other's energy and on that freedom, and like just the sheer amount of love and care and topless stage diving. Like, this is the thing, when you tell people it's a women's venue, they're like, oh my god, are you all sitting in there talking about how traumatized you are? I'm like, no, we're naked and full of tequila as we wish to be most of the time, but it's not safe to do so. There's a lot of snogging going on in there. I don't think it's our friends coming back out, sir.
And that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I was going to ask you a little bit about what that was like, as well as a door policy, because obviously it was in Shangri-La at Glastonbury. The kind of, you know, rave quarter, everyone going there after, like, you know, the main stage is closed, let's just go and party at Shangri-La. And I loved when Booty Bass did our little takeover, like so much fun, like as you say, such an amazing energy when you're inside it, like really. It was one of those things where when people are coming in, they're like, what is it going to be? You know, and obviously there's lots of controversy around women only. Oh my God, like femme identifying only. Why can't boys be in there? Blah, blah, blah.
They're in there plotting.
Like, but it's all, exactly. Like, well, like, why are you so panicked about it? Like, don't worry about it. And it was really interesting. Well, but also they know that something's happening that they don't necessarily... like they're not invited to. And it's really interesting because it's like when you say to people specifically, this is not a space that is going to be good for you or catered towards you, they want to go. But, you know, as you said, like there's a lot of other places you can go. There's a whole festival you can go to while your girlfriend or your friend or whoever comes in for half an hour. Like, it's going to be fine. We're going to look after her. But it was really...
I mean, it's kind of funny, but there were kind of a few sort of fairly standard reactions to being told no. You'd get the kind of disbelief that they were being told no, like they thought that we were joking. I'm like, no, you can't come in. They're like, really? Like, yeah, all right. You know, we're a venue the size of a corner shop and on a site the size of a city.
Just not this one, babes. You'll be fine.
Not this one. You've probably got a better chance of sneaking backstage at the Pyramid. So there was that kind of like, really? Okay. And then you'd get a lot of like guys try to like charm their way in because they all think that the exceptions are cool. And so there'd be a certain amount of like having to keep them entertained so they don't kick off. There was some hostility. Some guy threw a punch at one of the people who was on the front door because she told him no. So it did get a bit scary sometimes. But by and large, actually, what I found was really interesting was like age bracket wise, like you're kind of like your guys in there kind of like sort of 60 and over, you could pretty much guarantee that they would like back away like we were the queen and like respect sisters. And then there were kind of like the younger guys as well, who I think many of whom are much more engaged and invested in feminism. And then there's those who have also just realized that these are the things you have to say to get laid now. And again, they will be like, oh yeah, right on, have a great night, off we scamper. But then there's kind of, I guess, in our age bracket, like a sort of like late 20s to late 30s kind of area where they're not totally sure how to respond. So yeah, that was another very interesting kind of sober eye on the mass, you know, because Shangri-La is like, it's the end of the road. People have been out all day. They are hammered. They are there to just like be in the pink bubble. And so when you offer a space that has like sofas and art and, you know, people who are going to be delightful to you, and a venue that cleans itself because nobody's trashing it, when you're like, come on girls, you can come in here, you can have on the sofa if you want, literally no one's going to fuck with you. Like being able to be like a bit mumsy, which I am a bit mumsy and have no desire to have children, but I've channeled it through throwing parties for girls, basically. It was a really special. It was a really special kind of, we were on the kind of like last crossroads before hell kind of thing. And
but I think it's such a good like microcosm of society, and actually of what it is to like, obviously it's like, it's a controlled environment, but so many of those reactions you're talking about, I'm like, I have seen those and experienced those even when dealing with harassment, sexual or otherwise, you know, if it's someone asking to grab my hair, if they even ask, you know, it's this thing of like, oops, sorry, didn't realize I wasn't allowed to do that. Which is like,
sorry, you're a person, are you? Whoops.
Yes, sorry, I thought you were a dog. Sorry about that. I thought I could just pet you away. You know, and also like very bad people who pet dogs and don't ask their owners first. But that's another conversation. But it's like, but yeah, it's that thing of like either being like, okay, yeah, back away, immediately apologetic. Some who are like, you know, who want to engage. But then there is this thing of, but why? But why can't I? And this aggression, and even as we were talking about that I was like, these are the reactions. Like that's the spectrum of reactions that I would expect when sticking up for myself, whenever in a nightclub or in that kind of situation, when challenging someone about being in my personal space or thinking that they have a right to me in whatever that might be, whether it's physical, whether it's wanting to engage me in a conversation I don't necessarily want to have, whatever. Like these are the spectrum of reactions. And also like I was thinking about as well, because I think when I was on the door once and I was sort of, you know, because mainly it was lovely. Mainly it was like, oh, no. And then go, oh, okay. Oh, go on, babes. Like my favorite men were the ones who went, oh, go on. Have a great time. I'll be here waiting on the way out. I was like, you, sir. Yes, you, love you. But then what also really interested me was the women who would turn and go, oh, come on, he's fine. Oh, come on, why can't he? Oh, and it was like, wow, like we... And I think we don't talk about that enough. We don't talk enough about the people who will prop up the ones who we're trying to escape from. You know, totally. It's like when there's been instances of harassment in the past, like a lot of the time the guys will go and get their girlfriends to come and fight that battle. You know, there'll always be a woman nearby, a person nearby who can verify you, to gaslight you into thinking that you shouldn't have made a fuss. You know, why are you telling me that I'm being misogynistic? Oh, why are you telling him that he's being this, that like he's just trying to be nice to you? And it's just those people, I think, are the ones who are going to need to do the most work, to be honest, because they're the ones who are kind of slowing the whole thing down.
Yeah, you know, it's so heartbreaking to engage with. And there were a couple of instances on the door at the Sistxerhood where there were kind of women, I guess, kind of more of our mother's age group who were like, really offended. Offended that the husband or the partner couldn't come in, and then seemed very angry with us that we were like, girls are awesome, we don't need guys to have a good time. And I think that in that kind of generational case, and it's not just age specific, but in that case whereby it is so much safer, it's so much safer to be on the side of the oppressor. I'm not going to stick my head up, I'm going to prop this up. And I think there is the resentment that comes like, well, hang on a minute, I've spent my life buying this bullshit and swallowing it down. How dare you so cavalierly go, we probably don't need guys to have a good time. You know, I can see how that really stings. I can see how that really hurts. And, you know, that kind of like, swallow, not wanting to stand out, not wanting to, you know, engage in the exhaustion of facing your own oppression. You know, I think that's how we end up with like, black politicians signing off on that bogus race report.
Oh my
like,
God, right?
It's never affected me. And I'm like, it's really not my place as a white woman to kind of psychoanalyze that, but I feel like it's in that same field.
Yeah, it is completely. And it's that thing of, yeah, let's go and get the black friend to tell everybody that we're not
Yeah.
racist, you know, let's go and get the woman to go and tell all the other women that he's a really nice guy. And I've had instances before where I've called someone out on their behavior and received really horrible calls from the women in their life who they've gone and cried to. Oh, poor me, poor me. They say that I've assaulted someone. Not, okay, let's engage with a conversation about assault and let's talk this through and let's see if maybe, sir, you acted in a way that was not okay. Instead, no, let's just go and get people to come and fight my battles for me. And I think, yeah, which I guess kind of brings us on to the Hult harassment framework, which is, you know, ish kind of why what we're here to talk about. Because, you know, I think, yeah, in terms of like my background, I never really wanted to run events. That was never what I wanted to do. I knew it was always going to stress me out. I knew that there was a lot of stuff that...
work throwing a party.
Oh my gosh, it's a lot. It's a lot. Like, it's one thing having a nice little house party and being able to prepare your own tequila shots. Like, it's very, very much another doing it in a nightclub. But yeah, and I think, but what was really interesting to me is like, I didn't mean to, but I was DJing and people were coming to see me play. And then because of the kind of person that I am in terms of like when I'm DJing, I'm dancing around on the stage and I'm having a really good time and I'm playing dance hall and I'm grinding like with myself. There's no one else there. I'm just grinding with myself. Actually, the people who are coming to see me were from a really, it was a really intersectional audience and it was one that felt really very free to just be there. And because everyone who came knew what I was about, you know, after a while. And I was very kind of very sure of like if I could see something that like if I could see a guy going to dance with a girl that didn't seem like she was really into it and she was trying to get away, I would, you know, stop the music and go, sorry, sir, I don't think she's into that. Could you move away, please? Because I can see the audience, you know? So it's like, I know, and even when I run my own nights as Booty Bass, like, I want to make sure that we can see the audience for that exact reason, because I see it as my duty of care. If people have come to see me play, it's my responsibility, not only mine, but it's partly my responsibility to make sure that I'm not just there having a good time for me, but that I'm aware of what else is happening for the people who have come to see me play. And it was just like, I think when an incident happened at one of my nights, I was so surprised, and it was someone who didn't normally come, and there was definitely this feeling of what to do now, you know, whose responsibility is this? How do we go about this? How do I make sure that this doesn't happen again? And yeah, I guess like after a series of conversations and with the venue and with other venues about like how as a network of people we can start to tackle this, because it's not just in one venue, it's not just one night, it's about society waking up and realizing that this is a systemic problem. You know, people get assaulted because it's so, and don't speak up about it because it's such a, it depends completely on who you're talking to that day. It depends on who has decided whether what you've experienced is assault. You know, it's like I've gone up to people before and said, someone's just grabbed my hair, and they go, oh, okay, that's a shame. And I'm like, well, it's physical assault, but sure. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's call it what it is. And it's like people have forgotten that open racism and groping and, you know, being openly dismissive of people from different backgrounds and beliefs from you. People are acting like these aren't hate crimes, and they are.
Well, I think it's very interesting that misogyny is now just in law recognised as a hate crime. But I think what allows for people to unthinkingly grab your hair and for women to be assaulted is the fact that we are dehumanised. You know, we come from a legacy of people who have been property in one way or another, and that resonates. That's never truly been recognized, challenged, because that is, you know, that it's, you know, it's still there, it's just in another form. And you know, particularly with the kind of what is called sexual assault, because it's the, you know, generally around the parts of bodies that we have deemed to be sexual. I imagine, again, similarly with kind of like racialized physical aggression and hair grabbing, it's not about I just desire you so much I can't possibly override my instinct to touch you. It's about control. So like people give the example of like catcalling. Oh, that's just a compliment. They want to tell you how fit you are. It's like, no, they want to remind me of my place, make me feel uncomfortable. If you want someone, if you desire someone, you try and make a good impression. You don't show them that you're the kind of idiot that's going to yell out tits in the street. It's very different. And I think going back to the kind of what you said about the incident at your event, I'm very happy to say that incident was me being touched by someone in a way that I found deeply disgusting. And it wasn't because we were chatting and it was a flirtation gone awry. It was because I asked him to move. And he responded to being told something he didn't want to hear to immediately make me feel small and violated and dehumanized. And again, we really need to shift this thinking about sexual assault being about desire and I just couldn't help myself, or this is just how men are, because it's not like what we're asking for is for a sexless society. Like I would like to be more of a slut, frankly. Like the only thing I have a whole section in my wardrobe of things I would never wear outside, but God, I look sexy in them, because I know that it's just not worth the effort, and that I know that if something does not, if something does go awry, or like, let's say the inevitable, the most likely outcome is that someone's a dickhead about it, I will immediately be told, well, that was your choice to wear that, and you therefore, you roll them's the breaks, you roll the dice.
You wear something sexy, someone's going to touch you. That's just the way it is.
Exactly.
And it was
that whole we are just animals. It's like, hang on a minute, we're animals that have invented poetry, philosophy, farming, the internet. It's like we're not, like we're
they're not these baseless creatures.
Exactly. People just love to bring that whole like it's biology, it's basic instinct out when it suits them. And I find that to me is one of the real issues with this. I think, I also have a lot of feelings about, what the view people have of sex generally. And this, I'm giving fairly heteronormative examples here. Like, that's not to say that within queer circles we don't have issues with assault and people going too far. We absolutely do, but the majority of cases it is men making things difficult for women. And I think that is because the relationship between desire and control has become so muddled in their minds that the idea of people, if a woman enjoys sex, she's looked down on. It's like, but then there's like, what is it, that phrase? It's like, if you think a woman is impure after you've touched her, look at your hands. But it's everything gets thrown on us. Oh, well, I desired her so much, therefore, she drove me to it. But like, it's just simply not, it's just such a bullshit argument,
But I also think within that argument, exactly as you say, it's like, it's not about passion, it's not about desire, it's about control. And it's like this, often what can come out as well is like, oh no, he wouldn't have done that, he's got a girlfriend. That means nothing. That means absolutely nothing. That means absolutely nothing. Like, oh no, she's not being prejudiced, she's got a black friend. Means nothing, means absolutely nothing. Like, you're not engaging with the right conversation. What you're doing is reflecting, deflection, and you're not allowing the conversation, because if you allow the conversation, you're going to have to do some reflection. And if you do some reflection and realize that you're not the person that you thought you were, that's a much bigger task for you. And the thing is, again, it comes back to this silencing. Silencing is control. And if the person who's being groped or who's been made to feel less than, if they're the one who has to take home the shame, they're the one who has to go home and question, should I have worn that? What did I say? How did I mislead? What do I do now? Do I want to tell because there was a moment where you weren't even going to tell me that it happened to you, because
I was just thinking this, I didn't want to make things difficult for you by telling you this guy who's been making out that he's somehow going to, magically wave his wand over your career.
lol.
Yeah, I know.
Lol.
And I wasn't going to tell you. I was like, all right, look, it wasn't the first time this happened to me and it wasn't the worst time. I'll just shake it off. But you know what? Like, that's not the kind of relationship I'm trying to have with you or with anyone.
No.
So I did tell you. But the thing that made me tell you was not, okay, I should just say this for my own good, was like, well, if she is going to be in a studio or in another environment with this guy, what's to stop him doing that to her?
Yeah.
So as a result of his casual bratty action that his shitty friends defended when I told them to take him outside, we've had tears. It's taken us ages to get round to being strong enough to feel like we want to do this conversation publicly. You've been harassed. We've had to deal with people in positions of power making excuses for this particular guy. Like, the amount of time and energy, not only, and our own rage, our own trauma, our own despair, all of this stuff that's attached to this. Whereas this guy, the only reason that he would have ever given it a second thought is because we did try and make some noise.
Exactly. And when we made noise, that's when it got mad. And that's the thing. It's like, we've talked a bit before about the burnout that comes with holding these conversations, because it is so exhausting. It's so exhausting to go back to those moments, to make to hope that people are going to even care. Because also when this happened, I was like, okay, I was so happy that you told me. I felt so deeply responsible and ashamed of the fact that it happened at my night.
Oh my God,
and I
babe.
think, and that was and and I remember talking to you about it and you being like, but this isn't your shame. And it's like, no, it's not. But like, I was so shocked because, he didn't normally come, but also like, I just felt really responsible, and I felt really like, where do I go for this? And I felt so helpless in it. And it was only because really I spoke to the venue themselves and they took it seriously. If they hadn't taken it seriously, if they had said to me, oh yeah, that's just how it is, like, we'll just have to move on, I probably would have stopped putting on events, I think, because I was so, I felt such a wave of despair, so awful for you, because I was just like, I can't believe that happened to someone who I love so much at a night which I've grown to love so much. And yeah, it's taken a lot of our conversation to be able to, remove that shame and put it where it belongs. But this is the thing, the shame cycle and the gaslighting are the things that stop us from speaking out, and it's much more comfortable for them if we don't speak out. But because the venue was so great, it really did make me think, okay, so what, like, they don't want this as the people who have the venue. I don't want this as someone who is running events. My people who are coming to these events don't want this. And that's kind of what kicked off the whole Hult harassment thing, really, because it was a case of being like, okay, because, that was it. Because also then, after being told that he was banned from my events, he then tried to come to another one, which was like halfway across town. And it was like, wow, he really hasn't learned his lesson. And he really thinks I'm going to back down. And he's really trying to scare me into doing what he wants. And what happened in that situation was I said he can't come in here. He knew the security who then who then kind of said to him, oh, don't worry, mate, I'll go and talk to the manager. And I was like, excuse me? And so followed him and said to the manager, that person is not allowed at my events, told him briefly why, and said, if you let him in, I'm going to shut down the night and I'm going to leave. And he said, oh God, we don't want that here either. And so the guy was told that he couldn't come in. And that was when it got really scary, kicking off, staring at me through the glass, like, that's when I started getting all these harassing calls. And I just thought, wow. But again, because of how that venue was, I was like, okay, so this is two venues now who are stuck by me and also know what I'm about. And then after speaking to a few different venues, it was like, yeah, none of us want this. None of us want to be holding this, because the responsibility is all on us. It's all on me thinking, how shall I deal with this? It's the venue thinking, oh my God, how do I deal with this? And it just came out and I was like, actually, we need a standardized way of dealing with this, which is used across the board, but also has built-in consequences. So if you're repeatedly harassing people, you get, don't come. Like you're not safe to be in these environments until you've gone and done some work with yourself.
You know what, the level of denial involved in this stuff, talk about, male fragility, white fragility, the initial reaction is denial.
Yeah.
Because it's such a thing to reckon with.
Yeah.
And so that's where it becomes really, really difficult to imagine. And I was just thinking, when you were talking about this, like, we shouldn't feel like we were so lucky that we were taken seriously. And also, I think I think that Hult Harassment is such a great idea, partly because it does take it out of our hands and potentially give us a little bit of hope and give people somewhere to go from, so that this isn't necessarily just going to have to be carried on the shoulders of those of us who care about it because we've been touched by it, to use a gross sentence there. But like, you and I are, I think, both people who are perceived as take no shit, stand up for ourselves, big strong girls, say what we think. And I think we're the kind of people that are generally, it's like, oh, those are the kind of women who stand up for themselves. And yes, we are.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we don't need protecting. That doesn't mean that this isn't hideous for us. And I think also it's like, well, okay, so we are a little bit more in the stand up for ourselves and speak the truth kind of people. But many victims are absolutely not. And they're not going to speak up for themselves. They are going to, see that the penalties of doing so are so high. And that is, I feel like I'm kind of conflicted. I'm like, yes, okay, so that means it is my duty to speak up for other women. But how I think you use this phrase quite a lot, which I think is a really good one. How much am I prepared to bleed to be seen?
Exactly. And I think what you say is so true, because I won't take, I'm more likely to take shit for myself than I am when I see people who I love being shat on. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I think the fact that it was someone else, because he behaved disgustingly to me on the same night, not in the same way at all, but he was inappropriate, and I told him he was being inappropriate. But no one will know how much I've cried about this situation. Or how many nights that I haven't slept, because it didn't even happen to me. But the fear of him, of going up against the system around him, the fear of how he stands within the community, of how, he, the people that he was enlisting to fight on his behalf. And I was like, I'm not even trying to fight with anyone. I'm just trying to be safe. And I think that's the thing. It's like, it makes you question everything. And and even when thinking about picking this back up, because, thankfully Art Space, Life Space, who, when I was working with them is how this framework came to be, Hult Harassment came to be. They managed to get some extra funding to be able to finish off the work that we started. But again, it's like, why is it down to these tiny grassroots community spaces to get funding to try and do this, when this is a societal problem, and people who have many more means are going to be able to get proper funding for this? But this is expected to be carried by these tiny organizations, and the people who were involved in it, who are carrying the emotional weight of it anyway. It's down to us to be the ones to keep trying to save the world. And it is not sustainable, and it's not fair. And actually, this is why I think we spoke about it before, thinking about these really amazing initiatives that get started and don't go anywhere, because the people who are putting them together, because as we say, they care, are not held. And it's like, yeah, great. That sounds like a really good idea. Make it happen. Well, where is the support? Where's the emotional support? Where's the financial support? Where is the holding in this conversation? Or is it just go do, and we'll back you up? Like, no. You need to stand up now. You need to be in front. You need to make sure this is a collective voice, and not leave it to the people who will speak up to be the only ones speaking.
You're describing what I see so clearly in so many kind of grassroots struggle to eventual legislation, too little too late. The Disability Discrimination Act would not have been passed had disabled people not put themselves in danger, chained themselves to the front of buses and made themselves vulnerable to assault. Now the government gets to be like, cool, well, we've written it down, so well done, chaps. And then now disability benefits, that's being run by the same fascist state that still doesn't want disabled people to have any rights, but they've been forced to make a more progressive stand on paper. And I think it's kind of relevant to kind of raise the proposal that was floated. I don't know how far it's gone, but in the wake of Sarah Everard, the young woman who was at this point allegedly murdered by a police officer, there was, that happened around about the same time that the research done by the UN on sexual harassment of women, 97% of us, that the immediate proposal from the government was like, yes, we must keep women safe. We're going to put plainclothes police officers in nightclubs. That'll seal the deal. I mean, the insensitivity of that as a reaction to a woman being killed by a police officer is one giant steaming turd. But the fact that they're, we should be the ones telling them what we want. In fact, we've been telling them what we want. We've been ignored by the police, by the government, by the establishment, generally speaking. And so just the arrogance of like, yes, I want something to happen. Yes, I want the government to take this stuff seriously, but I do not want them to be in charge of deciding what we want. And why plain clothes? Like, I don't want the popo in the club. No, I do not. No. But what I would be absolutely up for, and this is something that, we've kind of poked out a little bit. It's like, well, what about, a national, what about retraining security?
Yeah. And I just want the responsibility to not be on us. Yeah. That's the thing. It's like if there's someone, and this is something that came up in some of the Hult Harassment dinners, it's like people being like, why do we, the people who have been harassed, then have to go and figure out who's running the place, then try and figure out if they're going to be open to me discussing the fact that I've just been harassed, and then also have to be the one to be seen to point this person out, put myself in further danger. Like, why is that the case? And it's like, if you actually want to help, then why do it covertly? Why not actually take it seriously? And why is it that the people that we'll have doing that are the same ones who people have been protesting against in terms of like, the way things get done? Like, as a Black woman, I don't feel like the police are going to be the first person to turn to. I've never had an issue with the police in my life. I've never been in trouble with the police. But the only instances I've had with police have normally been ones where I've gone away thinking, oh, why do I feel like that's not going to protect me? And actually it's like, I don't want the police to be the people who are going to go, oh, this is what we'll do now. Because again, that's passing on responsibility. I want the people I want the everyday person to be the one who's saying, you're being weird, move away from her. I want everyone to do that.
That's just addressing symptom. Like, yes, I want people to be chucked out of clubs, but what I really want, and this is again where the grassroots, we do lead the way. We are the ones that come up with the solutions that then, as I say, either get taken on or co-opted. We do need to be able to make demands of the law, but what needs to change is that no matter what the law is, there are going to be plenty of people who still don't think that we're people, or who still don't think that it's in any way problematic to touch other people if they feel like it. And the danger, of course, of having the police or mandated other organizations within clubs is, I think you're kind of getting there with saying that, who's going to be believed. This is not going to be, in a vacuum. And going back to that UN research, it's basically says what we know, and is reflected in the Sarah Everard case, is that white women are far more likely to be perceived as victims and be believed. there's there's other research that indicates that the more physically attractive a woman is, the more likely she is to be believed, when we know obviously that actually a lot of the time women who are being assaulted, it's not desire, it's about she was so beautiful, I couldn't resist it. It was well, she looks insecure and like she's not going to make a fuss. That's the like that's what we need to be making considerations of in terms of vulnerability.
Or even not, because it can be that, or it can be, I'm going to go and prove myself. I had a very upsetting moment when a few years ago I was walking along a street in Bristol and a guy grabbed my hair, and I turned around, went into friend mode, and I went, come on mate, you know this saying, you don't touch a black woman's hair, because he was black, so it was kind of like it was also kind of like, why would you touch me? like don't do that, but also like, you as a black man know not to touch black women's hair. So
there's not really an excuse of ignorance at that.
Do you know what I mean? So it was kind of that, but it was a friend mode. It was a back away from me, we move on. 3 hours later we came back up the same road, and the guy's friend came up to me, another black guy, and he went, you told my friend not to touch you. And I went, yeah, because why would he touch me? He doesn't know me. And he said, look at you, you're a black woman, and you think that you can go around talking to people like that. You're at the best a 3. You'll be lucky if anybody ever wants to touch you. And I said, you're black too. I don't know what you're talking about. And he was like, don't worry about me, love. Like, the world likes me. And I walked away because I was like, I don't even know how to engage this right now. And my friend, shout outs to Helen, little blonde bombshell, love her to death. She was like, how dare you speak to my friend like that? So she was kicking off, and he spat in her face. And then I ran back to get her, and then he spat in my face. And I beat him around the head with an umbrella, and he ran away. But then we were left there, and we were left there with the original guy who touched my hair, and she knew him, and she was like, what the hell? Like, why are you letting your friend do that? And he went, oh, that was my friend, that wasn't me. And so much of that was like, I'm not taking responsibility. He was the one who started in the first place, as far as I'm concerned, because he didn't have to touch me. Your friend was showing off to you, which is why he decided to come at me. And now here we are, 2 people who are minding our own business with spit on our faces, and I've been told that I'm nothing because I'm a black woman. And that's the thing. It's like, we didn't even, I was like, I'm not going to any police because it's not worth it. Loads of people are like, oh, that's a hate crime. It's like, yeah, it is, but I can't be bothered with trying to convince someone about why this is awful. And to be honest as well, more than anything, I didn't want to put myself in a position of trying to tell someone that and them look at me in a way that I've had people look before, which is like, oh, well, you should be able to handle it. And I think, again, it comes back to that thing. You're a strong black woman. You should be able to handle it. No, I shouldn't. And because conversations around intersectionality aren't had, there's not a lot of outrage when stuff happens to black women. There's just not. There's not that same level of, we must look after them, we must care for them. Anyone who doesn't fit a certain vision of what a vulnerable woman looks like will be cast aside, whatever intersection they may fall into. And that's the problem. It's about women, but it's also about intersectionality, and it's about people being able to see the different levels of misogyny that can come out when dealing with things like harassment.
I'm shocked, but sadly not surprised by the content of that story. I'm really sorry you were treated like that, but where you were
but we've all got those stories, haven't we?
When you were quoting that guy, I'm like, well, he's actually verbalizing what's usually kept quiet,
Yeah.
And
exactly.
That whole idea that you're a black woman, therefore you should be able to handle it is just that's just some of the deepest bullshit. There's been all this kind of research confirming that black girls are perceived to be older and more sexual than they are. And also just being like, oh, well, like the assumption being like, oh, well, you're used to suffering, historically you've been treated like shit, so
you'll be fine. And that's not even taking into account like colorism and misogynoir, because it's like that was horrible, of course, but also like the darker you are, the worse it is, and that's just a fact. It's like the different ways that you have to have a barrier up, as we were talking about at the beginning. It's so multi-layered, and people really want to have easy answers and not look at the nuance of misogynoir and colorism and self-hate and all of these things that come from this colonial patriarchal society that we're still trying to figure out how to battle. And that's why in a lot of ways as well, it's like it can't fall to the government, because that's still within a system that is working very well for those people who set it up in the first place.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I guess I'm kind of thinking about when we were talking about, the sort of the women who find it generationally very difficult to face, our not needing a man kind of situation. And I think that's kind of it's, as someone who has been making kind of some inroads into examining my own racism and my own part within white supremacy, it's like, that is a deeply uncomfortable process. It's very embarrassing. It makes you want to scratch your skin off and throw up your toenails, but that's really not the worst thing that's ever going to happen to me. It's like, it's really not that bad to be faced with the idea that maybe I'm not the star of the show. And I think that social justice movements have always been led by women, largely by Black women. And I think the fact is that we are so used to not having cultural capital, to not having power, that actually change and being adaptable and thinking, globally and in community comes easiest to us, because we have not been given burden of male privilege, which I do think is a burden, because it's clear the patriarchy is not making any of them happy either. And I think, and I see it as kind of like narcissism. So a narcissist, they perform and operate within this very grand idea of themselves that is built on an extremely shaky foundation. And I think with men, it's like there's all this like, okay, gotta be the macho thing, gotta be the aggressor. I'm king of the universe. And they go along with that and they use it as an excuse for all kinds of behaviors. But I think deep down, most of them really know that there's no logical reason for them to be there.
And also, I don't think a lot of them want it. Like, I watched a really lovely stand-up the other day, and the guy said, South African guy, and he was like, I envy you women. He was like, I called up a friend of mine the other day and I said, oh, what are you doing today? And she said, oh, I'm drinking Prosecco and crying. And he went, I want to drink Prosecco and cry. He was like, can I come and join you and drink Prosecco and cry? But he was like, but I couldn't ask her that because, I didn't want to infringe on her space. But he was like, but women, you get to say those things out loud. Like, we don't get to. And I just thought, God, that just wrapped things up for me so well. Because I was like, you're not benefiting either, but we still need you guys to help us dismantle it, And I'm just thinking we're starting to go over the hour mark. So I'm wondering if we should start I know. It's just been such a deep, interesting conversation, which I love.
What happens when you give two Sagittarians a microphone? I know I bang on about this, but I do feel this is one of the very magical pillars of our relationship. And most of the people in this world I like the best are Sagittarians, because we tend to really enjoy ourselves.
Listen, I love me and I love you, but I love us together. You know what I mean? No, but it's so, I feel like we could talk about this stuff for hours and hours and hours, which we will in the future. Exactly, which I know we will. But I guess, to start rounding up, like what is the future of this for you? Like, what have you got coming up that's making you feel really optimistic about what this what the next phase of nighttime economy and your space in it could be?
Well, so in terms of, I'm not rushing into putting on any events at the moment, partly because I'm like, okay, there's a roadmap, but let's see how that plays out. I'm, my nerves just can't take the stress. But what I do have what I'm working on is a festival. I've been given my own festival to run, which is very exciting and basically the dream job. So that is going to be in September 2022 on the full moon of the 10th of September in Cambridge. And that is going to be a festival of power and activism, because we use the word empowered a lot, to the point where I think often it's like, oh, I feel empowered because I look sexy. Like, no, I want real power. I don't want to just feel good about myself. I want real power. Like, how do I get into politics? How do I form a union? How do I organize a community? And I increasingly, as I go along, I think that is, I'm pretty witchy, and I'm very interested in a lot of the relationships between kind of spirituality and, generally the oneness towards social justice. So it is going to have, speakers and workshops from as many kind of spiritually grounded or spiritually motivated, or the relationship between spirituality and social justice, basically, like talking about this kind of, there needs to be a psychic revolution here. We need to be changing the way we feel about ourselves, the way we think. So that's going to be in 2022, and I'm very excited that the whole crew is going to be made of women, non-binary and gender non-conforming people who are being trained. Thank you to the Arts Council for giving me this budget. Are being trained in how to run stuff. So we're, they're all going to be trained in like sound and light, in curation, in marketing, in like community organizing, so that's all very exciting. And that's going to be my kind of main body. And again, that will be bringing together kind of all of the best of kind of the safer space policies, the kind of community specific spaces that we've been kind of working in. And that, I draw a huge amount of inspiration from people like Babes, from people like Pussy Palace, from Bar Whatever, where it is like up front and center, like this is going to be a good time, and this, this is how we're going to do it. And there is no space here for any manner of fuckery. So that's going to be very exciting. In terms more broadly, I mean, it's so different. It feels like kind of pissing into the wind a little bit to try and make any predictions. I'm like, okay, am I excited about the summer of sit down clubbing to come? Not really. Am I excited about virtual festivals? Not really. Like, I'm patient. Like, I can wait until it's time for me to literally be inside that speaker again, until my ribs can rattle from the face. I'm like, I can wait. But I guess, there is the and I live right on the beach in Brighton. So there is going to be, last summer was pretty crazy. I think it's going to be even more so this year, as London just like runs screaming for the sea. And I do understand that we very much need to do that. And there is literally no other economy here apart from tourism. So it will be good to see the city actually like live again. I am concerned about what that's going to look like in terms of like, people being released from jail and drinking all day in the sunshine. So I'm thinking that the private festival, the small scale festival, the let's go camping and build a bonfire is going to be where it's at, I think, for me. And it is great to see that there are, that festivals are proposing to run, and it's obviously a shame but a necessary decision that Glastonbury has to go on hold again. But it's just financially just such a monster. There's literally no way they can take that gamble again. But with that said, I'm kind of excited to see what that might do for the smaller independent festivals, what that might allow for the bigger festivals to learn from the smaller festivals as well. In terms of, like,
and I feel like this, it gives space, because it's been interesting sort of speaking to a few Bristol-based festivals who are thinking about how to apply this Hult Harassment framework to their events. And it's like, yeah, if we can start trialing these in smaller spaces where we have more control, we have ways of finding where the loopholes are and working together on how to fill those, it means that when bigger festivals, bigger nightclubs, whatever it is, when things start to grow out, there can be some mutual learning from each other to be like, okay, cool. So how are we going to make sure that we keep this going and we don't just go, yeah, cool, let's put thousands of people in a spot and just hope for the best. Like that can't be what it is. And like that, the idea of that makes me feel very nervous as a festival goer and as a person who might be playing at any event, festival or big event or whatever it is. And I think even just knowing as well that some of these spaces might be thinking about how they're going to safeguard and provide a good duty of care to people from marginalized backgrounds and for people who have been subject to assault and stuff like that. Like, I just want to know that they're thinking about it. I want to know that they have a plan. You know, I want to know that if something happens, there is a process that they have thought through, not just, oh, we'll just see what happens. And I mean, luckily, a lot of the people that I was speaking to have been thinking this stuff through, but I think it's gonna, it'll be really interesting to see what the next, what happens this summer, but probably more what happens next summer and how these conversations continue to grow. Because like with Black Lives Matter, like with everything, it's like, it's people know what to say in the moment so that they feel good about themselves, but actually what is being put in place to make sure that these conversations don't stop once the perceived threat is over.
Yes. Is this a survival mechanism or is this actually a change of plan? I mean, I suppose more broadly, one thing that I'm very much eyes on the prize for next summer. I think that's going to be where it's at, one hopes. But there is an optimism that I have. So sort of kind of more, you know, in the area where I'm kind of talking more about like mental health and disability stuff. I am hopeful that one of the silver linings of this pandemic situation that may emerge is that the dialogue around care and loneliness and vulnerability and mental health and our need to be around each other, my hope is that actually, because we've now, everyone has gone through this trauma together, there is this collective reckoning of, you know, all of our kind of busyness and performance and social life whirl and gossip and drama and relationships. It's all been stripped away. And what I hope is that this will somehow, I mean, there is, you know, the other pandemic is, of course, the massive mental health issue that everyone is depressed now, which is shit, but also a perfectly reasonable response. I am hoping that there will be a way for the conversation around that vulnerability, around that care, about our kind of, you know, duties and love for each other to change, because there's been nowhere to hide from that. So that is my kind of, that's what I'm sort of holding on to and driving towards and kind of thinking about collective experience and what kind of offer we will make or not as we decide to run events. Like what, you know, it is always going to be about the music and it is always going to be about the fun and the dancing. But, you know, we're obviously, as we've covered, we're already kind of engaged in what else needs to be there, and in that kind of looking at that, well, what are our basic human needs? That, you know, the death of FOMO, I welcome it. You know, the great pause that has allowed us to actually be our very basic, boring little human selves. I am hopeful that good changes will come from that will be reflected in and cultivated by events and in the arts. That's my Jerry Springer's final thought.
What a final thought to end on. Thank you so much. And before you go, where can people find you and follow you if you want them to?
I don't, but thank you.
You don't.
LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn.
There we go.
Alice Holland, Holland.
Yeah. Find her on LinkedIn. Keep your eye out for Powerhouse Festival. And
please do. Cambridge Junction, September the 10th, 2020.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
2020,
2022. Never 2020. Oh, thank you so much, lovely one. And it's been such a joy to talk to you about this.
Pleasure, darling. Thank you so much for asking me and for doing this.
So there we have it. Thank you so much to Alice for her open, honest conversation. It was so nice to be able to talk to her about this. And I just wanted to very quickly pick up on something that I mentioned, and it's mentioned in passing with my experience, how awful that was, but then also how much harder this whole thing is. The darker you are, the more vulnerable you are to people's ignorance. I actually wanted to read a quick excerpt from Loud Black Girls, which is excellent. It's a collection of essays about being loud and black and a girl. And it's by Phoebe Park, wrote this bit, who was in the beginning of the Receipts podcast, which if you haven't listened to it already, I absolutely recommend. It is excellent. And it says, a note on privilege. And I just wanted to read this out because she really phrased it incredibly well, and better than I did in that conversation. So it says, a note on privilege. It's time for an acknowledgement of privilege before we go any further. Being mixed race in the UK and many other countries brings with it a healthy dollop of privilege. The obnoxious and toxic laws of colorism dictate that the lighter your skin, the more desirable you are. The less threatening you seem, the less likely you are to be a victim of racism. While I share some of my experiences as a mixed race woman, they quite literally pale in comparison to the experiences of black women in Britain and beyond, and the constant, ignorant barrage of life-threatening racism and misogynoir they endure. So yeah, I just wanted to read that out because it pretty much sums up how I feel on the subject. Go and buy it. It's absolutely wonderful. Loud Black Girls. It's by the people who run Slay in Your Lane. Wrote Slay in Your Lane, in fact. And thank you again to Artspace Lifespace for putting the funding together so that I was able to record this with Alice, and that the campaign for Hult Harassment to continue being looked at. As I mentioned before in the intro, if this is something that you're interested in, please do drop me an email. Keep your eye out. This is really something that I think has to start with the community. The framework was written from a series of discussion dinners where people came and talked about why they don't report harassment, and what would make them feel safer to do so. And then that was then developed through talking to promoters and venues about where the difficulties lie for them. So it's very much open. It's not only going to be carried by me going forward because of things mentioned in this podcast, but I absolutely do want to be a part of change and safer spaces for all of us. So thank you for listening, and I will see you again next time.
See them looking at me, none of them, they don't wanna know me, just wanna show me to their homies. I see them looking at me.